ministry of a bishop holds many joys and blessings. One of them is to ordain and license ministers to particular ministries within the diocese. These last few weeks have seen a number of announcements made across the diocese in this regard. On Sunday, 3 ministry areas learnt that they were getting a new curate to serve alongside them later in the year. All being well, and the virus permitting, I'll have the joy of ordaining Mandy, Andrew and Karin as deacons at Newport Cathedral in June. The 3 of them have been on quite a journey, from that first sense that God is calling them to some kind of formal ministry, through a rigorous selection process, and then training at St. Padans. Each of them will have their own story to tell of their joys and sorrows, hopes and fears, doubts as well as faith, as the journey towards ordination has progressed and their sense of call affirmed and deepened. Now they're near the end of their training and are looking forward both to ordination and to serving as curates. Also, over the last few weeks, I've had the joy of licensing priests to new ministries in the diocese. They've had to be done on Zoom, like most things at the moment, but they've been a joy nonetheless. Once again, discernment has been at the heart of the process, as both they and the wider church have sensed God's call. For the priest, it's discerning when God is calling them to move on, to where and to what new ministry. For the churches, it's whether this particular priest has the gifts and experience for the work that needs to be done, whether they're the right fit for the churches and communities they'll be serving, and most importantly, whether this is the person God is calling to lead them forward in their life of worship and service. The licensing service is a joyful confirmation of that call, and a moment that signals a new and hopeful start for the churches as well as for the minister. But the life of a church community isn't dependent on having an ordained minister or even a formally licensed lay minister. Last week, I heard a wonderful story of a little church up in the north of the diocese that started to hold services in the churchyard once the first lockdown was lifted. It was the church warden who gathered them together, recognising the need in that little community, not just for company, but for mutual support and for praying together. The chairs in the church were taken outside, and the people who came, probably 8 or 10 of them, led the service themselves. It was a simple service of morning prayer with some intercessions. Occasionally, a local priest would come and give a sermon when that was possible. But more often than not, the church members led the worship themselves. As a result, they've grown even closer together and are exercising a real ministry of pastoral care together within their little community. There's been no formal training, no formal authorization. Just the people of God coming together as the church in prayer and worship, offering fellowship and service to one another and to those they know. As the licensing service reminds us, Christ invites each of us to faithful discipleship and service. We are all called to different ministries as we seek to live out God's love. That small and faithful church community up in the north of the diocese is a wonderful example of what this can look like.